Hey, and welcome to a new episode of Worlds Collide, the podcast where I talk to people who moved abroad. I am your host, Viktoria, and thank you so much for being here. So first things first, I just wanted to say, in case you haven't done so already and you really like this podcast, you could jump to the app where you listen to and give it a 5-star rating, because then more people would find it, and then more people will get to know how it is to live abroad with all the ups and downs. And this is also why I'm doing this podcast. So that would be great. Thank you already for that. But now to this week's episode. My guest this week is Lambert, and he moved to the UK from South Africa. And so we recorded this a while ago, like in November, I guess, when the weather in the UK was really bad and he was on vacation to get a little bit more sun, because that's one of the things he missed. But we will talk about this, and we will talk about a lot of other things, like, for example, moving when you're already really rooted in your country, when you're already in midlife, you have to relocate your whole family, including getting passports for the dogs. So if you're interested in that, then you have to listen to the whole conversation, because that's coming up in the end. But yeah, it's about like having a hard time settling in with some difficulties culturally and weather, and a lot of things come up. And it was a really honest intake on how his journey has been. So listen to the whole thing. Here it is. Here's Lambert. My guest today is Lambert. Hey, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And you?
I'm good too, thank you. So tell me, where are you?
At the moment, I am on holiday in Egypt, in Sharm el
Oh, you're on
Sheikh.
holiday. Okay,
I'm
but
on
where do
hol-
you live?
yeah, I'm on holidays. I live in the UK now, in a town called St Albans, which is just north of London. So within easy reach of London, about 20 minutes by trains. So really, really convenient for my work.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been there?
So actually, I think 6 years ago we moved. So November, I think the 4th of November 2018 is when I arrived in the UK, and then the family moved the 28th of December 2018. So I started a job in the UK earlier, and like paved the way. Yeah.
Okay, so you moved the whole family?
Yeah, yeah. So it's my wife and I and 2 sons.
Uh-huh. So why did you move there?
Several reasons. I don't think there's one single reason. Generally, I think if you ask any South African why do they move from South Africa, and it's a general, I think it's a general trend that people move. It's generally the political situation there,
Mm-hmm.
the crime situation. We were affected by crime a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think economic reasons are another big contributor to the decision to ultimately move.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in our case, it's a mix of all three. And also, I think a little bit of a sense of adventure, because my wife grew up in Johannesburg in South Africa. So she stayed basically in the same town her whole life,
Okay.
and never had the opportunity to go anywhere. And I think it's just a sense of adventure,
Okay.
or wanting to go try something
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a big part of it. I mean, I guess if you wouldn't have it, you wouldn't even consider it, I guess.
Yeah, I worked a lot internationally before we moved.
Uh-huh.
So I spent a year in Brazil. I spent a year in Germany. A long time in the UK as well. I think I spent a year in the UK. So I've moved a lot. Um,
Okay.
so initially I thought it would be easy on me, this move, but it turned out to be to the contrary. I think it was a lot more difficult and a lot harder than any of us initially expected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you also grow up in Johannesburg?
So I grew up in a tiny little town in the eastern part of the country called White River, which is
Mm-hmm.
close to the Kruger National Park. And then I moved to Joburg probably 19, when I was about 13 or 14 years old. And then, yeah, I've been in Joburg ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you know why you decided then on the UK?
Yeah, my wife's French, so we were looking to move to France initially.
Mm-hmm.
But because the kids doesn't speak French, it would have been, I think, a big barrier for us.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
then we looked at Australia, but it was too difficult to get the points due to our age. And then basically the only avenue that was open was the UK, and which we took just before Brexit. So we snuck in before Brexit took effect.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Got in
yeah.
with
All
our
right.
got in with our French citizenship, and then yeah, settled there. And I mean, the fact that it's English played a big role. The other thing is, I got headhunted about a year before we moved, and then I took a position and started to work in the UK. So that made the transition easier because I had a job already.
Mm, okay.
So that gives you a little bit of financial stability in there, but
Yeah, of course.
yeah, and makes the transition slightly easier because you've got a bit of support locally.
But yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And do you remember how old your boys were when you moved?
Well, yeah, 13, 11 thereabouts.
Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
that explains also that you were considering the language.
Yeah. Yeah, because they were entering high school
Mm-hmm.
at that point. The eldest were going to high school. So to put him in a French school, or both of them in French schools at that point, I think would have would have been a little bit too difficult and throwing too many obstacles, I think, into successful settlement. I think it would
Yeah,
have been too
yeah.
hard. So even though they're French, they don't speak French at all.
Yes, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And for you, when you arrived, like, how did you do this? Because you said the family came later.
yeah.
So what were your steps?
So we knew we were going to move in about August 2018. I had to finish my job. My wife quit her job. She came over to the UK, looked for places. I mean, we had really no idea where to settle. Um,
Yeah.
and she literally looked on Google Maps, looked at the town called St. Albans, said, "I get a good feeling about this place," right?
Okay.
And that's how we wound up in St. Albans. It was like literally nothing more than looking at Google Maps and my wife saying, like, this town speaks to me, or the name speaks to me at least. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
But at
So
least Street View or just like a satellite.
like I wanted to, there was a couple of other places where I wanted to settle, but like, eventually it was like, I know one place or two places in the UK really. Like I'd lived in Reading and a town called Loughborough, and neither of them were very great. So
Hmm.
so I said, okay, whatever. If those names speak to you, then fine. I mean, there were a bit of arguments about where we're gonna stay because St Albans is very expensive, but I mean,
Okay.
we settled in very well in the end. But yeah, so that's how she chose St Albans. So she came over in, I think, October, got us a place to stay while I was finishing work, and then she left the UK. We both landed because at that point in time I was still South African. I didn't have French citizenship through her.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, so I had to be. She basically had to get me into the UK because I
Right.
couldn't enter the UK
Yeah,
without her at that
yeah.
point as an accompanied spouse. So I continued to work in November, and she went back after about 2 or 3 days. So we arrived, I think, on the 4th. She returned on the 7th. I worked until the end of November. Came back, back home December, and kind of like hybrid worked, packed until we left on the 28th. And we went on holiday before as well.
Hmm.
Holidays is a big thing in our life. So, but we went on holiday before, and then literally packed the last kind of things 2 days. We came home 2 days before we left, literally packed everything into boxes for 2 days, and then off we went on a plane
Okay.
and
And
arrived
did you have
December.
an apartment then already?
we had a house, so we had a house ready. So the house that she came and got for us in October, I took possession. She took possession on that 4th of November. And then I went a couple of times while I didn't stay there in November. My company got me accommodation. But like as Murphy would had it, they got me accommodation in the south of London. So it was like, I mean, they couldn't possibly get me further away from my home if they tried.
Yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
so I took possession of the keys. Went there 3 or 4 times just to make sure that everything was okay. Measuring the doorways and realizing that we're going to have problem fitting our furniture in, which was all in
Mm,
containers at that point in time. So there was no going back.
okay.
So that was another big ordeal. But yeah, so I took possession of the house, and then when we arrived in December, we stayed in a hotel for 2 days, waited for the movers to arrive, and then early, I think on the 30th of December or the 29th, thereabouts, the movers arrived. Yeah.
Okay, so it took about 2 months for your things
Yeah, it
to
took
arrive?
about 2 months. Yeah. Yeah, it
Okay.
took about 2 months. Yeah, a little bit. Like we were so fortunate in the timings because it was between Christmas and New Year. They said we'll have problems getting our containers, and if there's a delay
Okay.
in the containers, we had to pay extra charges. And
Oh,
like, if there was delays, we would have had to stay in the house for like weeks potentially without our furniture. So it was like it literally worked out perfectly. Like the day that we landed, the 28th, because we took a day flight, they literally contacted us and said our container has arrived and they can deliver it in 2 days. So it was quite fortunate. So we were very lucky. And
nice.
yeah, so very lucky. So we had a place, basically we had a place to stay from day one.
And so, but what did you do when you noticed your furniture doesn't fit in the house?
Oh goodness, that was, yeah. Um, so the movers arrived with this massive truck in front of this tiny little house because at that point in time, because we were under so pressure, we had, and bear in mind we had 4 dogs, right? So no one would rent to us.
Okay.
So we literally took whatever was available. Um, so this massive truck around in front of this tiny little house.
Uh-huh.
As the movers unloaded, these guys just burst out laughing when they saw what we bought,
Oh, yeah.
right? It was like, you're going to fit this through there, right? So literally half of our furniture we couldn't fit. So we had to rent temporary storage. So one of these garage storage places,
Mm-hmm.
fit in a couch that was made for a South African living room, which is huge, into this tiny little living room. So we could only fit in one couch, basically the TV and like stand and a coffee table, and you could hardly move in this thing. Um, yeah, so half of our furniture went into storage, and I spent the first 2 days assembling IKEA furniture,
Okay,
which,
so you had to buy new.
yeah, yeah. So between all of this, we went to IKEA, bought furniture, like bought 3 beds, cupboards,
Right.
desks, like everything that wouldn't either fit or we didn't ship over because we didn't ship over beds. While my wife was unpacking, I was assembling IKEA beds, made a terrible hash of the cupboards. So eventually we had to get a handyman in to help me build. So I'm like
Okay.
ashamed to admit that I couldn't assemble all this flat pack IKEA stuff. But I was exhausted. I mean, after 2 days, I was emotionally and physically drained from just sorting everything out. So in between all of this, we still had to buy a car. So we went to Car Giant and just picked up
Oh, okay.
the first. I spotted a little Mazda 2, so we just picked that up so that we have something to get around. We had to return the rental car, the rental van, which was full of boxes. We had to return to Heathrow. And then it was New Year, so my wife booked us the day before New Year. I had friends that lived in the UK. They invited us out for dinner, so we went to London. The next night we went to the New Year fireworks. So we just took on we took on too much in this first couple of days.
Yeah, it sounds like it's how long
Yeah,
how
instead of
long did
just
it
like
take you to like finally got
yeah,
everything organized?
yeah. So instead of just relaxing and chilling, we just went full throttle, and did everything. Went to the fireworks that evening. All the train stations closed around us. All the tube stations closed around us. We literally had to run to London Bridge, which was miles away, to catch the last train to St Albans, and we got home at about 4:30 in the morning.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I'd still had to work the 2nd of January, which was which was not very well arranged. But anyway, so it took us. But luckily, we shipped the kids off to some relatives that
Okay.
lived in the UK, so they weren't part of
Okay. At
this
least
whole
they were
endeavor.
not in the way.
They were not in the way, yeah. So we got everything settled, and then they came the first week of Jan in time for schools to start. Yeah. And then we
Okay.
were settled. And then, yeah, my wife had to get through because we came through on her French citizenship.
Right.
She had to find a job within 3 months. Um, so there was, or 6 months. So there was a lot of stress around her finding a job. So we went through some really tough times in those 3 months. It was really, really difficult getting the boy settled in school, her finding a job, like permanently just looking for a job, and me starting a new position as well. So it was a kind of a tough time,
Okay.
but it
And
all worked out in the end. Yeah.
yeah, so I just have like some technical questions. Like how did you then become also like a citizen, like or get your
Yeah.
residency?
Yeah. So initially, I got there on a spousal, like a accompanying visa.
Mm-hmm.
Then we applied for. Then I applied for my BRC, my biometric residence card.
Okay.
Um, so that took about 3 months. So we did that whilst my wife was looking for a job, and we did it through an immigration lawyer at that point. And
Okay.
they were very, very good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think about a week before we submitted the application, my wife got a position,
Okay.
which she accepted. So that made the application a lot easier. So I submitted my documents, and about 2 weeks later, I got my biometric residence card, which was valid for 5 years, which was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Brexit, I think in 2020, yeah, about 2020, we applied for pre-settled status, which took about a week for us to
Oh,
get.
that's
So yeah,
quick.
yeah, really quick, really efficient. I mean, one thing you can say about the British, if they want to be efficient, they're hyper efficient, right? You submit
Okay.
the right documents, and it's pretty easy. And
Okay.
now we've got permanent residence. So we
Uh-huh.
got settled status, which took about 3 weeks to approve, but it was also because it was over Christmas and New Year. But it was never an issue. There was never any comebacks, never any questions or so on. And then we applied for citizenship in January.
Okay, so
Yeah.
everything was very straightforward.
Everything was very straightforward. I think I had more difficulty getting my French citizenship than any of the British, any of the
Okay.
British uh, like residency and so on. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And then I also want to go back to the school. So how did you decide on which school your kids go to?
yeah. So when she came in October, they went and did open days at all the schools.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was there was a school that my wife really wanted them to go to, but they weren't so keen on it. So they settled on an all boys school, which was inside the area where we lived, called Verulam. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
Verulam boys school, which which for them were very good because it was an adventure for them, I think. If you go to Verulam, it's academically very good, but I would say discipline is a bit lax. So they get away with a lot of things, and the stories that they told us were like uh, really, really funny. I mean, they would lock kids in cupboards, and they would they would actually also, I don't know what the word is, but they would also not always go to class, and um, so yeah, so they took full advantage of the experience of a boys' school, and I mean, they would come home muddy, covered in mud, because sliding on
Okay.
a rugby field during break in the rain is like a thing, you know. And you look at these kids
Okay.
and you think, oh my goodness, how, like, no, you know. But close to where we live, so eventually we moved. So the house we stayed in were not ideal. So eventually we moved, and we moved to another school called Sandringham, which is like a really posh school.
Okay.
You know, the kids are immaculately dressed, hyper disciplined. You know, they can't remove their
Mm-hmm.
blazers when they even outside school. You know, they have to be immaculately dressed. And
Mm-hmm.
then for their sixth form, which is the last 2 years of high school, they went to that school.
Okay.
So it was quite a transition for them, but they actually settled quite nicely. And yeah,
Okay, so it was more disciplined
yeah, a lot
than
more,
the
like
first one.
hugely more. Like it wasn't Verulam wasn't bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like a hooligan school, but
Oh,
they
okay.
allowed. I think they allowed the boys to just like be boys. You know,
They'll be kids, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
big kids, do whatever. Like, uh, like good up to get good natured mischief, if I can put it that way. You know.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a good experience for them. I think they both loved it. They both loved the school and made some really good friends in there.
Mm-hmm.
But now when they moved to Sandringham, it was quite a transition for them. But they adapted. They adapted quite well.
Okay, would you even say like the transition was tougher,
I
like
think.
from
I
the
think on
first
the.
move?
I think on the youngest, it was tougher because the youngest is a little bit. I mean, I think all the eldest, I think, are always more focused, more driven. The youngest, I I think, are always a little bit more relaxed and so on. So going from like a boys' school to this disciplined school was was a bit of an adjustment. Um,
Uh-huh.
like he didn't like it for the first few weeks.
Oh,
I think
okay.
yeah, I think he struggled a bit, but now he's adapted fine. He actually likes the school. I mean, even after holidays when he goes back to school, it's not a big deal. So
Okay.
yeah,
And how about for them moving to England? What um did they just did they had like anything to complain about before you moved?
yeah, they had a
Or
tough time adjusting. So it
yeah.
took a lot of my wife's time in the beginning just to make sure that they were okay and give them
Uh-huh.
the necessary attention and help them through making friends because both of them had trouble making friends.
Mm-hmm.
The eldest, so James is the eldest. He took probably about 3 months, I would say, before he actually made his first friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
so it
that
was
can
it.
stretch.
Excuse me.
That feels like a stretch,
Yeah,
probably when you're
Yeah,
lonely.
it was quite a stretch, and he went through a very difficult time. Um,
Mm.
I think my wife was very stressed about the situation as well. The youngest took a little bit longer,
Mm-hmm.
but he was more okay with. I think he was a little bit more of a loner at that point in time, so it was okay for him. It wasn't such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But he eventually made a good group of friends. He also joined football, so he had a football club that he went to, and you know
Mm-hmm.
made some friends there as well. But the eldest, yeah, it was rough on him. But when he made his circle of friends, he's still friends with those boys, and yeah, they're still very close.
Okay.
Even though
And
he's
what
in university now, so they're still very
mhm.
close. Yeah.
And what about you? Like how did or like how long did it take you to
Took
feel
us
comfortable?
took us a long time. It actually it surprised us. It surprised both my wife and I how difficult we found the move.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Um, we only, I think, only about a year ago we actually started making friends.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that is.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. I mean, it's so difficult. It was so difficult to break in, even to in the parents in the school, the
Oh,
parents
okay.
in the football club. Yeah, it was really difficult to
Do
break
you
in.
know why?
I think St. Albans to an extent is still very much very English.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, this is just our experience, right? And we found the English to be very standoffish and very, very removed. I
Mm-hmm.
think if I look now, like I joined the squash club and I've started making friends through the squash club, and
Mm-hmm.
all the people I'm friends with are expats,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the thing is I think we were just never in a good space to really join social activities or become too social because we were battling with the boys at one stage, and
Yeah.
like we were just battling with when my wife changed jobs, I changed jobs, so we were battling with life in general, I
Right.
think.
Right.
And then we had another move in between. Then COVID hit,
Oh, yes.
yeah, which was a big thing. So 2 years basically at home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that was tough, you know. And so when we went out of COVID, we weren't in the mental space really to join anything. And
Mm-hmm.
only about a year ago, I joined the squash club. She joined a couple of things as well. So we're starting to make friends now, which is great, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think COVID was a big
Right.
thing, you know.
Is
So
a
it was
downer
like we were
for
here
that,
for
yeah.
yeah, we were here for a year. We've just settled down. We've been on a couple of holidays, and then COVID hit, and then we're at home for 2 years. You know. So it wasn't the best experiences, I would say.
Okay. But the friends now, they are also expats
Yeah,
or
the expats.
yeah?
So I think the good mate that I've made, he's Cypriot. His wife's Greek. We actually have another couple who are actually, I would say they're probably the most British of them all. The wife is British. The husband is Scottish of Malaysian descent. So he's an expat Malayan, but
Expat, yeah.
Scottish, moved to England. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's weird. Like even at the squash club, most of the guys that I speak to are expats. Right.
Okay. They all like joined to make
It's
friends.
just weird. Yeah, because even though they've been here for 20 years, right? Um,
Okay.
I find it, even at work, most of the people I get along with are expats.
Okay, at work as well.
At
Okay.
work as well, yeah.
But
Um,
is it because you have something in common? Because I mean, I always get along super easy with expats because you kind of have the
yeah,
same thing in common.
yeah,
You know what to talk about, kind of. You know, it's not like find a common ground. It's
yeah,
already there.
yes, and like the British are like I don't want to be drawn into stereotypes, but they're
Yeah,
very,
it's okay.
yeah, they've I find them very cliquey and very
Hmm.
standoffish, very distant.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to get close to them. While expats
Mm.
open up quite quickly, you know. Like if I take
Mm-hmm.
the squash club for example, um, most of the English arrive, play squash, and leave. Right? It's the expats that
Mm-hmm.
hang around afterwards,
Ah, okay.
right, and chat and so
Sure.
on. So
Sure.
um, you know, so it's I don't know, you know, it's just strange to me. It's just different. Um,
Okay. And what is there that you miss?
from South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the sunshine, the weather,
Yeah.
my friends a lot as well.
Uh-huh.
Like I still speak to my friends often, but you know, I'm you know, it's I just miss the fact that you can just pitch up at someone's home, or they just pitch up at your home.
Right.
and you have barbecues all the time, and just visiting all the time. So I miss that social aspect quite a lot, and yeah, I kind of miss the South African culture to a large extent as well, because it's a lot more open and a lot more generally a lot more friendly and inviting, if I could put it that way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I miss that. I miss that a lot. I was actually thinking, walking in the sunshine today in Egypt, I was thinking, ugh, it would be nice to have sunshine in November. Um,
Yeah. Do you
so
I mean, is it very stereotypically the weather? Just
yeah,
fog and
everything
rain
that
all the
people say
time?
about the weather in the UK is true.
Okay.
Yeah, it's um, the summers are magnificent. Really, the summers are spectacular, but very short. And that the winters are, I wouldn't say brutal, but autumn is great. I mean, I love autumn because it's crisp. The
Mm-hmm.
leaves are changing. You still get a lot of sunny days, but there's a lot of rain. And but now November till about end of mid-April is just horrible. It's
It's
just
6 months.
gray and rainy and dull. And like before we got to Egypt, we had like 5 days of literally no sun, right? Just
Yeah.
gray fog, you know. Yeah, so that's a that's a kind of a dampening. It kind of dampens the mood a little bit.
Yeah. Were you considering that though, when you moved?
Yeah, but I don't think we were prepared to the extent that it will affect us.
Uh-huh.
In the
Ah, okay.
second year, I started getting that depression when you don't see enough light.
Mm.
So I had to change all the light bulbs in the house to natural, the
Oh,
natural sunlight projecting sunlight light bulbs,
yeah.
and that helped. But like I'm over it now. Like I'm used to it now, so it doesn't affect me anymore. But yeah, that was a very difficult winter. It was difficult.
Well, that's a good tip though.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and but yeah, I mean, when we arrived the first time, when we arrived in December, we arrived. It was 35 degrees centigrade in Joburg. It was 5 centigrade in London, right?
Yeah.
So it was immediately a big adjustment. We went to car shopping. It was freezingly cold and miserable and rainy, and my wife just burst out in tears.
Oh
Um,
no,
yeah,
really?
yeah, and it's like I was like, what do I do? What do I do? There's nothing worse than your
Okay.
wife crying, and she's crying over the weather, and there's like absolutely nothing I could do about it.
All right.
So I took her to a
Oh.
coffee shop and let her sit down there, have some coffee while I went to finish the deal for the car. But yeah, yeah, she burst out crying from the weather.
But is there also like some things that you really like and that you appreciate?
Yeah, so now we consider England to be our home. We
Oh,
absolutely
okay.
we love it there. The house that we moved to is fantastic. It fits us really well. It's large enough for the four of us
Mm-hmm.
to not get into each other's way too much. It's got a magnificent kitchen. So just the lifestyle now is great. The fact that we've got friends and we go out quite often is fine. We just and we now appreciate the tranquility and the stability that the UK brings compared to South Africa.
Okay.
Um, because I don't know how familiar you are from other stories you've heard from other South African expats, but politically South Africa is not great. There's a lot of crime. Economically it's not doing so well either.
Yeah,
So we
I
just
mean, but you're still like in the London area, so isn't it still like more the London economy
yeah,
that
St.
you have?
Albans.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So St. Albans is very much a commuter town, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people who live there commute to London, and yeah, yeah. I mean, St. Albans Albans is very pretty. I mean, it's like I go to town, I'm still stunned by how diverse the architecture is, how pretty the landscape is.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the oldest cathedral I think in the UK is in St. Albans.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So really appreciate that, I think. And then yeah, like I think life is easier in the UK to some extent because things just work. Um,
Oh, do you mean like in work of like things that usually I would take for
yeah,
granted, like no power outages
yeah,
or
no power outages, but also the fact that you can just post stuff, right? Like when I got my French passport, I had to register it with UKVI, so the visa
oh,
and
you mean like
immigration.
mail? Like send in
Yeah,
the mail? Oh,
and they
okay.
said like just mail your passport to us, just put it in the post. Like in South Africa, you would never do that. It's like no, oh my
Okay,
God, I can't put this in the post. No, just mail it off. And then like 4 days later, it got mailed back to me, right? Not even
uh-huh.
special post, just like first class
Regular
mail.
post.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So things just work. And the other thing is like just how safe it is because, the number of times we've left our key in the front door coming home
Uh-huh.
and people knocking and saying, you've left your key in the front door, are you aware of it? Or, left our cars unlocked. We actually don't lock our cars anywhere where we go
Uh-huh.
in St. Albans.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it's just safe and easy. I mean, the area where we live, um, it's like people walk their dogs in the field like at 11 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
People still walk their dogs past our house at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. So it's like foreign to us coming from South Africa that that kind of thing would even happen.
Okay.
My wife, she told me a story the first time they came. So then that October they came to the UK. They walked from the station to their Airbnb, which was in the middle of St. Albans. They had to walk through a little foresty area. They said they literally ran, locked the door behind them because they were just afraid. They had the South African attitude, and they're just like nearly. They said they nearly broke down. And then when she went to the kitchen, she opened the kitchen window, and there was this old couple walking their dog past the kitchen window.
Okay.
And she said, maybe, you know, maybe she just came up with the wrong attitude.
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, life for us, I think, is relatively easy, or actually very easy at the moment, and that's something that we really like as well.
Okay. And
Mm.
did your wife also then got better with the weather?
Yeah, I mean, she's used to it now as well to a large
Okay.
extent. We still like to escape to sunny areas every now and
Right.
again. But we we're used to it now. I mean, there's like we say, if you don't go out when it's cold and rainy, you don't go out. So we've been
Okay.
we over the past years we stood next to football matches that my son played in, where it's like windy, rain, muddy, negative
Everything.
2 degrees centigrade. Yeah, and we just stood
Right.
there, and it's like life now. So we got used
Right.
to it, and like I said, we kind of appreciate it. We love it when it snows. We like it when we love autumn when the leaves change.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a very dry area in South Africa, and when it rains, I still like the rain, believe it or not. So
Mm-hmm.
even though I'm in the UK, when it rains, it's like awesome. I like it.
Yeah,
So
because you
yeah,
know how much it is
yeah,
needed.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And is there anything that you don't get used to?
Yeah, the fact that it gets dark so early, like it just
Okay.
just catches me out every single year because I like to take the dogs for a walk. We've got this beautiful um, artificial forest basically where they plant indigenous trees and clumps and batches. So I walk the dogs there sometimes 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night,
Uh-huh.
and then as it becomes dark, it's like earlier and earlier, but it's like still manageable 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, and then all of a sudden it's dark at 5, right?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
you're stuck. Now what do I do? You can't go out. You can't. You're not as free, I would say, as you
Mm-hmm.
normally are. So that's one thing that just still gets me is the
Mm-hmm.
shortness of the days. What else?
But that's only in the winter or fall months, and then it gets better in summer.
Yeah, like I said, summer's magnificent. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's light from 3:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night. So you've got
Uh-huh.
these
That is nice.
hugely long days. Like you can just do
Yeah.
whatever you want whenever you want, and
Yeah, and then you just
uh,
have the opposite.
yeah, and then you just have the absolutely opposite. It's like in winter the sun sets at 10 to 4. 10 to 4 it's dark.
Oh,
The
okay.
sun only it only gets lighter like 8 o'clock, 8:30. It's like it's horrendous. It's terrible. So I just can't get used to it, and the speed at which it happens, right? It's just
Okay, yeah.
catches you out.
It's like, oh, all of a sudden.
All of a
So
sudden, it's like you take the dogs out at 8 o'clock, we still sit at a pub outside at 8 o'clock at night in the sun, and then like a month and a half later, it's like dark at 6.
oh yeah, yeah.
You know, no, it's unnatural. It shouldn't happen. Yeah, so that's something that we can't get used to at all. And then the lack of space. That's the other
Yeah,
thing.
because the houses are so small.
The
Or
houses are so small, the streets are so narrow.
uh-huh.
There's no space for anything. It's very difficult to be spontaneous because restaurants are always full and you always have to book a week in advance.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So, like, our favorite restaurant in St. Albans, we cannot get into unless we book a week and a half in advance,
Well, that's
right?
good for the restaurant. Sounds like a
Yeah,
very business,
but
very.
there's no spontaneity, and then they say you've got the table for an hour and a half, right?
I see. Okay, right. Okay,
So
maybe need to find just like a not as
yeah,
popular place.
yeah. So it's not like you phone up friends and say like we feel like going out tonight. Let's go to a restaurant, right?
Right.
It's like you need to book with your friends a week in advance,
Mm.
and make plans. So it's that we kind of miss as well, um, and I still find very difficult to get used to. And then the fact that you plan your trips so that you know that you can park.
Oh, okay.
It's like weird. It sounds weird, but you don't go anywhere unless you say, "Do I have parking and where's the parking?"
But
Right?
I thought like also like when you're still like in the area where you are that you don't even take your car as much.
In St. Albans, you do take a car.
Uh-huh.
So we've got a bus stop. We've got a bus service that runs in the train. So we've got a bus service that runs in the town and the adjoining towns, but it's not regular enough. It's not frequent enough to you know to not have a car, and it's
I
not
see.
extensive enough not to have a car. To London, we
Okay.
just take the train. We never drive to London. We
Right.
only take train, and because it's frequent and reliable enough, but the bus service is not.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's like sometimes I meet a friend who stays quite far from me, like in the middle, and when we pick a place close to parking, right? Otherwise, you're just
Right.
stuffed. Like if there's no parking, it's just gonna ruin your day.
Right. I also have like one question because you brought dogs.
Oh yes.
So how was the move with the dogs? And I mean, did they had to have like any special, I don't know, vaccinations? Did they
Yeah.
need papers or
Yeah,
could
yeah,
you just
yeah.
bring them?
So we had to get them passports, right?
Okay.
So in South Africa, we had to put them into quarantine for a month, I believe, if I remember correctly. Uh,
What does that mean really?
so quarantine, they stay they stay with in a quarantine facility, so
Mm-hmm.
so that and they're being monitored by vets as well, and tests are being conducted to see that they don't have any diseases that will stop them from traveling.
Uh-huh.
And then you put them on a plane. You've got their passports, and then yeah, we picked them up. They also stayed in quarantine in the UK, I think, for it. No, no, they didn't stay in quarantine at all here. There's just a holding facility at Heathrow, and then we picked them up from the holding facility.
Okay.
So quarantine for a month in South Africa, and then yeah, just shipped them over, just brought them over.
And how do you get them passports?
There's You apply through your vet, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, you
All
apply through
right.
your vet. They arrange it, and then yeah, you get these passports with the photo of the animal in it, and
Okay, like a
all their vet,
passport,
like
yeah?
a proper passport, and all their vaccinations and their medical histories in this passport, and then yeah, you
But
just do it.
is this only for UK or is this like in
I think I think
generally?
I think different countries have different laws. Like, I think the quarantine, for example, if you take dogs to the US or to Australia, the quarantine's much longer, and they actually have to be in quarantine in their arrival country, if I believe, if I remember
Okay.
correctly.
Oh,
But in
good
the
to
UK, there's no
know.
quarantine in the UK itself. So
Okay,
that's
but
very easy. It makes it easier.
can you visit the dogs when they're in quarantine?
We did not during that period, because, I mean, it was a difficult decision, but we didn't want to upset them, right? And we thought, you
Yeah.
know what, if we go and visit them for a half an hour or so, and maybe
Oh,
it'll
I
accept them
see.
more than them just settling
Mm,
down with the staff, because they're very well treated in the facility. So
mm-hmm.
we thought, would it be disruptive to them? Would it not be? And we decided in the end not to upset them and just keep them there. Because they had all their blankets and all their baskets and everything and all their toys there. So,
Okay,
they
so you
were
didn't feel bad, really?
not, well, we did kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Because we spoil our dogs rotten. I mean, our
Okay.
dogs are just they're just spoiled rotten. So it was a very difficult decision. But
But at least you could take them. You know,
what's it?
those like,
Yeah, yeah. So we wouldn't have done the move if we couldn't bring the dogs.
right.
Yeah, yeah. But we treated them very well when they arrived.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, they were very spoiled when they got here.
Okay, I guess. I have no more questions.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's great talking to you.
Yeah,
It's
it was
nice
really
to
nice talking
recall
to
the
you.
stories as well. It's nice to reminisce
Uh-huh.
over what happened and how it was. So yeah, it's nice meeting you.
Yeah, it's a very interesting intake. Because like usually, people are always like, "Oh yeah, it's so easy." I didn't have any problems in the beginning or something like this. So it's
Oh,
nice to hear like,
yeah, I think so. I think two things, right? I think the older you get, the more difficult it gets, right? Because
mm-hmm,
you've got such a network and roots in the country that you leave. The
mm-hmm,
friends that I left in South Africa is friends that I've had for uh 35 years.
mm-hmm.
It's like school friends that I met when I like in my first year of university and so on. So very, very difficult. So very long lasting friendships, very deep friendships, and
Yeah,
to let it go is difficult. And I mean, the older you get, you're not as resilient anymore either. You're kind of
yeah,
set in your ways. It's need to adapt to another culture, and that's maybe why we had difficulty making friends as well. It was like just the difficulty adapting to the culture and not being as fluid, I guess, as we should
mm-hmm,
have been. Yeah. But at the end, it worked out okay. It worked out fine. So,
yeah.
yeah.
All right.
But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
that's my story.
Oh, that was Lambert. Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode. I always have such a good time recording this for you. So I hope you tune in again next week for another episode. Episodes are always coming out on Thursdays. And if you want to reach out to me in the meantime with anything that you want to tell me, maybe if you want to be a guest on this podcast or tell me what you liked or what you didn't like, I would be happy to hear it. Also, maybe come up with a question that you would like me to ask a guest or anything. So please reach out to me at worldscollide123pod@gmail.com or find me on Instagram at worldscollidepod. It's one word. Yeah, and that was it from this week. Thank you as well to Serge Quarando for the music, because I always forget to mention it, but thank you this time. All right, and that was it, and I'll see you again next week. Until then, bye.